Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and these are my favorite flop romance novel recommendations for early March 2019. So most booktubers call this a wrap-up, and they do them in one part or two parts. I call this my favorite flops because I don't find star ratings terribly helpful. I want to know whether I should read a book or pass. So today I'm going to be talking about 11 different romance novels that I read in the early part of March 2019 and letting you know which ones I think are worth your time. Let's start with the first book. That is Pretending He's Mine by Mia Sosa. This was a flop for me. The trope is a brother's best friend, fake relationship type trope. The heroine is kind of drifting between jobs. She's currently a flight attendant, but you don't get the impression that she's completely sold on doing that for the rest of her life. The hero is a theatrical agent who is actually her brother, who is a movie star's agent. So the conflict is basically that they can't date because the hero doesn't want to jeopardize his relationship with her brother. But she's had a crush on him for a super long time. So when her living situation becomes untenable and she moves in with him temporarily, she decides to take that as an opportunity to make something happen between the two of them. And this really comes to the crux of what didn't work for me about this book. First of all, she kind of basically sexually harasses him in his own home for the first 40% of the novel. I think if this were gender flipped, it would have made me even more angry, but just because it's the heroine and the heroine's bad behavior doesn't necessarily give that character a pass for me. That said, once we got past the first 40%, I actually thought this was a much stronger book. The fake relationship trope really kicks in a nice way, and I thought the conflict from that point on was more interesting, more believable. I think had the book started at about 40%, I probably would be saying, yay, fave! But because it didn't, I just really can't recommend this one. In better news, the next book I want to talk about is Firelight by Kristen Callahan. This book is a historical paranormal set in Victorian times. I read it for a Romanceopoly Square, the one where you, I think it's the taxi square, where you have to read a book recommended by the challenge hosts. And I had some trouble finding one on their list that I had on my TBR, and of course I'm not buying books this year. So it had to be something either on my TBR or something I could get from the library, and I've been really trying really hard to read things off of my TBR and not from the library when I can. So this particular book is Beauty and the Beast sort of retelling. Beauty and the Beast slash Phantom of the Opera slash, I don't know. It's just, it follows the trajectory of those stories quite thoroughly. But of course it's a historical paranormal, and I really thought it was terrific. In fact, I thought it was so terrific that I went out and got from the library the next two books in the series, which are Moonglow, which is a classic paranormal romance, heroine sort of discovering her place in the world, discovering what her powers are within sort of this otherworldly realm. And the hero is a werewolf. So that one was really great. And then, and that one also counted for Romance Genreathon, which is another reading challenge I'm doing this year, where this month we were reading books with either Irish or Scottish protagonists or set in Ireland or Scotland, and thus in Moonglow, the hero is Scottish. And then the third book in that series is Winterblaze. This book, oh my goodness, it's a marriage in trouble trope. This is one of my favorite tropes, and it actually is a little bit hard to find these days. You do sometimes see it in historicals more often than anywhere else. And in this particular case, the heroine has been keeping something from the hero, and he finds out about it, and it really significantly damages their relationship. And then she finds out that he's been keeping something from her, but he didn't know it. That probably isn't helpful. Anyway, basically, it takes them the entire book to really get over these secrets that they have and to sort of repair their relationship, and has a lot of action and adventure and a mystery along the way. This was an absolutely lovely book, and I was very put out when I had to put the fourth book, Evernight, on hold at the library because it was not instantly available. And I was whining about this on Twitter, and Callahan herself, oh my goodness, was kind enough to let me know that she happens to have some leftover paperbacks from when this book was kind of on its book tour, back when it first came out. And she's going to be at a Polycon this weekend, and so am I. And she offered to gift me the entire series in paperback. I'm not supposed to technically take ARCs this year. I'm not technically supposed to take freebies this year, but I'm choosing to view this one as more of a gift. She was trying to save me from having to wait on the copy from the library, which was just so kind, and I kind of feel like I'm doing her a favor a little bit if she's got extra books sitting around. We'll go with that. So anyway, those are the first 3 books in the Darkest London series. I will absolutely be finishing the rest of the series, and probably this month, because I doubt I will be able to stop myself. The next book on my list is Lucky Suit by Lauren Blakely. I listened to this one in audio. I got it for free through my Audible membership. And now audiobooks are not included in my no-buy, at least to the extent that I'm allowed to use my Audible credits and I'm allowed to download things from Audible when they are free. So this was one of the freebie Audible picks for the month. If you're an Audible member, you get to choose, I think, 1 or 2 free books a month. And there's very rarely romance. So when I see a romance, I do typically grab those. This particular one, as with previous Lauren Blakely books for me, was something of a flop. I think Blakely's books tend to be short, innocuous, inoffensive, not particularly angsty, and generally speaking, that's just not really what I'm looking for in my romance. I kind of like more high conflict, high drama stories, and that's just not what she does. And that's fine. It just may be that she isn't really for me, unless I'm in a very, very specific mood. This particular one, I can't tell you too much about it because it's very, very short, and I think the most interesting thing about the book is actually a huge spoiler. So I can't tell you what it was that I was like, ooh, okay, so that's not so bad. But I will just say that the hero and heroine meet through the heroine's grandmother. And the grandmother is a character and a half, and she's absolutely delightful. So I think it could be worth reading if you can pick it up for free. Otherwise, I wouldn't spend your money on it. The 6th book is this one, The Secret by Julie Garwood. I did not read this paperback, so I'll throw the ebook cover up here when I edit this. I read this book for Romance Genreathon. The hero is Scottish. This was my planned Romance Genreathon read for the month. The other ones that I have on that list were sort of accidental. I didn't mean to read a bunch of books with Scottish heroes, but I sort of managed to do that. And then this book is about a heroine who travels to Scotland in order to help her best friend give birth. Her best friend is pregnant and anxious about it. And so there's sort of a road trip romance aspect to it because the hero goes to pick her up in England and bring her to Scotland where her best friend lives. And then she, falls in love. It is a romance after all. What I really liked about this book though is the heroine is kind of one of these mid-90s sassy types. And it can kind of grate a little bit when they're too perky, but this heroine was just very capable, and that's attractive to me. The other thing I liked about it was that sometimes heroes, when they are faced with heroines like that, is they're very much, they're uncomfortable with their heroine's competence. And in this case, the hero was just really encouraging through all of the things that the heroine was learning how to do. And I really appreciated that. So this one is kind of an old school romance, but it's not old school in the sense of being sort of at all coercive or anything, which is great. So if you are interested in possibly reading an older romance, and this isn't like old, it's like I said, mid-90s, but if you're interested in reading a slightly older romance, but you don't want anything that's, you know, questionable consent or anything like that, then I would definitely recommend The Secret by Julie Garwood. So that one's a fave. And in fact, it's going right here on my keeper shelf. I anticipate maybe perhaps wanting to revisit that one at some later date. The 7th book that I read, also for Romanceopoly, for College Row, was The Year We Fell Down by Serena Bowen. This one was a flop. The book features a permanently disabled heroine. She was injured in a sports accident, and a hero who was temporarily injured, kind of doing something stupid. And their connection, I thought, was the best thing about this book. The romance was really interesting. It really depicted sort of some things realistically that happen in college. People making poor decisions about their relationships and poor decisions about their lives, and kind of showed how those two worked through those things, which I thought was great because sometimes you do kind of get college-age kids doing things that are, you know, very adult. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I did like the way that this book depicted that sort of transitional period. The other thing, but the thing that I didn't like about this was that the hero's arc was character arc was very well defined. He goes through a lot of growth. He interacts with, you know, another woman and his family and sort of stumbles along trying to figure out his life. The heroine is not really given as much of an opportunity to do that, unfortunately. Pretty much the only thing we know about her is her disability, about the fact that she's in a wheelchair, and then she also sometimes uses crutches. So we get sort of some of her physical journey, but we don't really get any sense of what she wants to do when she grows up, or, you know, what other hobbies she might have, or anyway, I really thought that the book really did her a disservice, and I didn't care for that at all. So, as anticipated, this was a sort of lesser read genre for me, being a new adult book. Oh, and by the way, this was for the Plug and Readathon, which just finished up. And this was, yeah, my lesser known genre. And I think new adult will continue to be a lesser known genre to me because most of the ones I've picked up have not quite hit me exactly the right way. The next book I read was another audio. This was A Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole. This was also for the Plug and Readathon that just finished up. This was to fulfill the Popular Book Challenge and is another accidental romance genrethon pick because the hero is, again, Scottish. Why is it always the hero that's Scottish? Where are the Scottish heroines? Anyway, the book is about Portia, who is Naledi from A Princess in Theory's best friend. So if you've read A Princess in Theory, you already know the heroine of this book. And you know that she maybe has a slightly dysfunctional relationship with alcohol. So this book picks up where she is trying to refocus her life. The hero is a Scottish sword maker, and Portia goes to Scotland to be his apprentice, and winds up basically making him internet famous on social media as the Scottish #swordbae. It's adorable. The first 90% of the book was great. I loved the interaction between the hero and the heroine. I loved the interaction between the heroine and her friends, mostly via text message, which just seemed very fresh and modern. And then the hero's interaction with his family, and then a conflict that pops up later in the book, which if you've read the title, you may have a sense of what that might be. And I really, really enjoyed almost all of it. The one thing that I didn't particularly like was sort of the last chapter. There's kind of a cheesy, kind of unsatisfying ending to this one, unfortunately. But I'm still going to call this one a fave. I don't think I liked it quite as well as I liked A Princess in Theory, which I thought was absolutely perfect. But I really did still enjoy this book, and I would recommend picking it up. The one thing I will say, too, is that I did listen to this in audio because this was sort of part of the challenge, but don't buy this book in audio. The narrator of A Princess in Theory also narrates this book. And she did a great job with A Princess in Theory. I really loved her narration. But for this one, she does not have a Scottish accent. She cannot do a Scottish accent, and most of the characters in this book are Scottish. It was very painful, and particularly if you have any idea at all what a Scottish accent is supposed to sound like, this book is going to be a little bit of a slog for you, listening-wise. Just pick it up an ebook. The 9th book that I read was Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare. Generally speaking, sort of lighter, fluffier historicals tend not to be super my thing. That said, this particular one has a little teeny bit more angst. The heroine is sort of poverty-stricken at the beginning of the book. She has been made famous by her father's fairy tales, children's fairy tales that he writes. That he has written, and now he's died and didn't leave her anything. And then the hero was scarred in a duel. And they both end up inhabiting the same castle. I'm not going to go into how that happens because, you know, whatever. But they end up inhabiting the same castle in kind of a, if you're familiar with snowed-in romances, there is a circumstance keeping these two together in the same space against their will. And so the romance kind of plays out like those ones typically do. Even though they're not technically snowed in. They could leave any time, they just won't. This was, had a little bit of angst, like I said, which I appreciated, and was mostly just really fun and really sexy, and also contains, if you have watched my videos before, you know I close them all with the same 3 phrases, including doubt not, which is a major feature of this book, an adorable feature of this book, and really made my 15, 16-year-old heart completely all swoony and lovely, and I loved this book, and I would almost certainly read it again, and I would definitely recommend it. So this one's a fave. After Romancing the Duke, I hit a little bit of a snag. I really wanted the next Darkest London Kristen Callahan book, and I wasn't available yet. It's still not available. I still don't have it. And I started, I think, 5 different books in between Romancing the Duke and the one I'm going to talk about next, and didn't finish any of them. I got past through like 7% of them, and then I just, all of them were like, ugh, I don't want to read this. So, the thing that snapped me out of that very brief slump was One Bed for Christmas by Jackie Lau. The book features a CEO heroine who owns a sort of Tinder-like dating matching service, and a hero who sort of does odd jobs, including graphic design and some other things, if I told you would be a spoiler. And this is definitely a friends to lovers romance. The hero has had a crush on the heroine for a very long time. These two genuinely are snowed in together, which makes this one of my very favorite tropes. And I would say that the writing is just a little bit mechanical. I think more of Lau's voice could have come out in this one. But what I would say is that the romance and the hilarity of this novella more than make up for any sort of, I don't know, flaws on the technical front. So I would say definitely I loved these characters, I loved the romance, and I loved the introduction of the setting of Baldwin Village, which is sort of an urban village in a big city, but sort of feels like a small town, an inclusive small town within a bigger city. And if you've ever lived in a city, you'll know that that's pretty realistic. That's what happens. So I really enjoyed this book. I really think the Baldwin Village series is going to be great. This is a great start to it. And I think the first book in that series, The Ultimate Pie Day Party, is already out. So I definitely pick up this one and pick up Ultimate Pie Day Party because Lau just really writes great inclusive contemporary romances. Now, the last actual book on this list, and I'm going to include one little bonus thing that isn't a book, is The Bride by Julie Garwood. This I picked up because I thought it might have been my first romance ever. I picked it up for the Plug and Readathon as my reread, and it was a complete fail. I assumed after finishing The Secret that all of Julie Garwood's books would be equally lovely. that my recollection of reading them as a teenager it would all carry through and everything would be fine and I would really enjoy them all. Unfortunately, the hero of this book is not, I wouldn't even call him an alpha hole. Like, I wouldn't even say that, like, he's overwhelmingly alpha in his assholishness. He's just an asshole. I did not like him. I did not like, right at the very beginning of the book, in fact, the first couple of pages, you learn that there's this kind of murdery subplot with this shadowy character who's, like, threatening everybody, I guess, for the whole book, and you don't know who he is, and I'm just not here for that in my romance. I just had no interest in pursuing that subplot through to its natural conclusion. So I did flip to the end of the book and kind of read the last two chapters just to see if it was worth slogging through that middle in order to see if it was gonna be, the payoff was gonna be worth it. And the hero was such a jerk in the ending that I was just like, yeah, no, this is just not gonna be worth it. So I DNF'd. I will divest myself of the paperback copy that I own. I returned the ebook copy that I borrowed to the library, and I finished the plug and readathon with a flop. DNF. Won't pick that one up again. Sorry, the bride. But to end the video on a high note, the other thing that I read for the plug and readathon was the webcomic Let's Play. And that was one of the challenges for the readathon. I had never read a webcomic before, so I didn't really know what to choose. So my friend Suzanne, who runs a blog called Love and Panels, suggested that I read this one, and it was delightful. The premise of the webcomic is that the heroine is an independent game designer, and the hero is a YouTuber. Right here, YouTube. He's a YouTuber who reviews games, all games, not just indie games, just reviews games. And he's like a big name YouTuber that everyone knows. And he gives her game a bad review and then moves in next door to her. So I would call this one a Friends to ? It is ongoing. There's about 71 episodes, and it updates on Tuesdays. They have not really determined how this is going to end yet. I mean, I think the author knows, but nobody else who's reading it would really know, because there are two other men in this heroine's life who could potentially be maybe romantic partners for her. Ordinarily, love triangles or love quadrangles or whatever annoy the heck out of me. And I want to know who the hero is right from the very beginning. But there's something about sort of the way this universe developed over the course of this webcomic that I read over the course of, like, I don't know, 6 hours. Like, I really went in hard on that one. That is just really, really captivating. And plus, there's an extremely charming doggo, which is always the way to my heart with any piece of entertainment, webcomic, book, whatever. So I'll link Let's Play down below. If you're interested in that webcomic, you can go check it out for yourself. Beware, you will not want to stop reading until you've finished it. So make sure you have a nice solid block of time to do it. That's about it for today's video. Just to recap, the books that I would recommend that I've reviewed today are, well, Let's Play, the webcomic, not a book, but still great. One Bed for Christmas by Jackie Lau, Romancing the Duke by Tessa Dare, A Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole, The Secret by Julie Garwood, and Firelight, Moonglow, and Winterblaze by Kristen Callahan. That's about it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. Please comment down below if you've read any of these books yourself or if any of them sounded interesting to you. And have a great week. Doubt not, slay some words, and Lex has your back. Bye.